It was like something in the bottom of my heart, back of my mind, just telling me to keep going, like you're not done yet. Just really hard to continue, but I love this sport, and just that alone pushed me to continue and to get better, to come back, and that's exactly what I did. So I'm actually from St. Louis, Missouri originally. I have two other brothers who actually compete in the Olympic weightlifting team. My twin brother, Darrel Barnes, and then my oldest brother, Derek Johnson. He actually began weightlifting when he was 12, I believe, and he got me and my twin brother into it around when we were 7 years old. And I think around 9, he became our coach, and he's been coaching us since, I think, until the age of 17, and then we moved away. But I would say the dynamic is not your typical dynamic for any other, I don't know, weightlifters that you may know. Obviously, we're siblings, so there's always that sibling rivalry. We always want to be better than each other. We always want to compete with each other, but the environment was just like no other. So we pushed each other. We know when we're just being lazy versus actually needing to take a break from the workout. And then, of course, having Derek as our coach / brother at the same time, it was still very different. It was just like, I don't know if we're listening to him as a coach, or do we have to listen to him because he's our brother? So whenever he wanted to push us, it was just like, sometimes we listened, sometimes we didn't. So it was just a little bit silly, but we were also serious about what we were doing at the same time. So. There was a local gym in St. Louis. It was like kind of a recreation center, but they also taught Olympic weightlifting. So I think at the age of 9, Derek came back from college, I believe, to become a coach there. And me and my brother were already there at the moment, so he just took us in, and we were just coaching there. That's where Derek originally came from, and then we were into it, and yeah. So that's how we got into it, and that's how we got into a lot of local meets, and then obviously they became to national meets and then international meets all at the same gym. So it's just a lot of members from this gym, like from school age champions to senior national champions to international medals. It was a lot of moving around. So I would say I graduated high school and I was recruited to East Coast Gold in New Jersey. So I actually lived there for a couple of years. And I've competed a couple under East Coast Gold, and then I lived in New Jersey, which was wonderful. I lived with Victor Gallego, my coach at that time, he's a keeping coach. And then after a couple of years, I actually went back home to study at Lindenwood University, and I got my bachelor's degree in graphic design. And after that, I was looking for another place to like do my full-time training again, just focus on weightlifting. And it just so happens that at that nationals that year, I can't remember if it was 2016, but I actually met Juan Martinez, which, I mean, I've known him for a couple of years, but he talked to me at that meet and recruited me to Academy of Weightlifting here in California. So like I said, I was just looking for somewhere to train and be with my coach at the same time. So it was just a perfect opportunity, and it was pretty hard to decline. I mean, it's California, so who doesn't want to be there? So I've always looked up to my brother, Derek Johnson, but to have Kyle and of course Fernando, who was an international competitor at that time, and then of course he became a multi-Olympian. It was really nice to train with those two, because not only are they really good, but they're also heavyweights, so they're just putting up bigger numbers. So I was a youth at that time, and I was just doing what, I don't know, not even 110, 140. So to see numbers like that being lifted right next to me, it definitely pushed me to be a better athlete. And then, you know, Fernando's technique is phenomenal, and then he's of course a brutal athlete. So he was definitely one of the athletes that I looked up to at that gym. And then of course, just watching his technique made me want to get better with my technique, sharpen up my technique, and of course get stronger, because, you know, he was a heavyweight. So, you know, he was super into stuff like that versus, you know, me having to stick in my weight class. But, you know, strength is still important at the same time. So. So that was actually a really tragic story. It was, I think it was a regionals in 2015, so I was like super prepared for this competition. Like it was to qualify for, I think, the Pan Am Games during that time. Training was going well, everything was going really well. And the regionals was actually in my hometown in St. Louis. So I made my first snatch, 115, that was my opener. And then my second attempt was at 121 kilos. And my opener was pretty easy, like no struggles, whatever. So 121, 6 kilo increase, like I said, no big deal. But yeah, the way that I caught it, I don't know what it was exactly, but I just didn't catch it the right way. So I dislocated my elbow during that attempt, and it was probably one of the worst moments in my life. It was the hardest to get over mentally and physically, just because of the recovery time, and then of course mentally because it's like, you know, you're training and you're just like, I don't want this to happen again. So any minor tweaks, any pains you have in your elbow, it would be like, it would discourage me to continue in weightlifting. But of course, you know, I was pretty much born into this sport, so it was like I kind of have to do it. It was like something in the bottom of my heart, back of my mind, just telling me to keep going, like you're not done yet. So, you know, I was 21 at the time, I think, so it was just like too early to retire, even though it was like a career-ending injury for most people, or in some time period it would be career-ending. So it was just like really hard to continue. But like I said, I love this sport, and it just that alone pushed me to continue and to get better, to come back. And that's exactly what I did. I actually talked to a couple other athletes. I know, for instance, Cheryl Hayworth. She had a very similar injury as what happened to me. She gave me some advice. She said pretty much what was going on to me currently happened to her, so it kind of made me feel a little bit better. The degrees in my elbow, like it was just taking a lot of patience to get back to how it was, and future injuries that might happen, like shoulder pains and stuff like that. Like she said, it all happened to her. So she just gave me some advice for training and being patient and stuff like that. So that helped me a lot. And of course, the actual rehab process was I would probably want to just dislocate my elbow all over again, because it was just a long, terrible process, you know, having the ATs and PTs like go at your arm like that all the time, just having to get the degrees back. It would just be so painful. And of course, training, seeing how your elbow feeling how your elbow is, and seeing how it looks on camera, just knowing that it's not the same, it would be discouraging. But of course, just knowing that just the day-by-day improvements, it gets better. So it was kind of a love-hate relationship with the recovery process. But just knowing that it was going up slowly helped me continue, I guess. So even before my injury, I always wanted to be better, and there were days that I would feel discouraged. There were days I just didn't want to go into the gym at all. But just that drive of wanting to be better, the drive to going from, you know, youth nationals to junior nationals to senior nationals to international teams and stuff like that, always was my drive to be better. And like during this injury, I just kept reminding myself that it's just a part of the process. It's just one of those things that you have to go through. I mean, obviously you don't want to go through something like that, but you know, it's just another obstacle. So I just kept having to remind myself, like, this is just something that you have to deal with sometimes. And as long as you stay on the positive end, then there's nothing you can't do. Yeah, actually, so there's a couple of them actually. There's one from, I think we were in Malaysia. It was a Junior Worlds competition in Malaysia, and we went to this snake temple, which I don't like snakes. And then these are just like some of the biggest snakes that you could think. It was like pythons and like all of these snakes, and like this guy barely speaks English. He's just like, oh yeah, you want to put the snake around your neck? And I'm just like, no, the snake is probably like heavier than me. No, he's just like, you're in Malaysia, come on now, like you can do this, like YOLO. It wasn't even a thing back then, but he said it for some reason. Yeah. But so I was just like, okay, whatever, like you only live once, so whatever. So I put this snake around my neck, and it was probably the heaviest snake ever. I can't remember what kind of snake it was. He just like, oh no, just stay calm. She won't do anything. She's not gonna bite you. She's friendly. So I'm just like, okay, it's not so bad. Like I'm sweating, nervous. Like I don't know what's gonna happen. So I'm just like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? So he's just like, just stay like that. You're fine. We're gonna get a picture. So we got one picture, and then he's just like, okay, this is another snake. It's smaller. I'm gonna put it on your head, okay? And I'm just like, no, one snake is enough. You're fine. He's just like, okay, that's fine. And he just puts it on my head anyways. So that's when all the sweat's like coming out. Like he got pictures of it. I'm like super nervous. I'm just like, I'm gonna kill this person once he gets these snakes off of me. And it was just like, but I mean, the picture was fine. So I was just like, okay, I can do this. And then I think one of the funnest moments, it was probably at the Olympic Training Center back when they still had weightlifting there. It was this random video a bunch of us did. It was just like, I think it was snowing outside, so we just decided to put our singlets on and just go run in the snow. Like, we're just like hopping over fins, like jumping all through everywhere and stuff like that. It was like Ian Wilson, Choma Michi, my twin brothers, like some names that you might be familiar with, but we're like all juniors and youth at the time, so we were just like doing the dumbest stuff at the Olympic Training Center. It's like during Christmas time, so it's just like, what else do we have to do? So like I think it was like either our last day or the day before last was when we usually do the dumbest stuff. So we're just like chilling, just doing whatever really. The Olympic Training Center is basically like equivalent to a university. Like you just have a bunch of random aged kids. It's just like, you don't do anything besides training. So it's just like, what else can we do? So it's just like, we almost have like no time to go outside of the Olympic Training Center. So like when we're there, it's just like, okay, well, we're here, so let's just do a bunch of dumb stuff. So like, I think it was high school. I was like kind of burning out of weightlifting. I was just like ready to take a break. But I decided instead of taking a break, I would just, switch, do something else that would just get my mind off of training sometimes. So I signed up for tennis, I signed up for wrestling, but I think that registration period had already passed. So I was like, okay, well, what do you have? Like, what can I do? And they're just like, we have cheerleading. I was like, cheerleading? They're just like, you know what? It sounds bad, but it's really not that bad. Like, you're lifting girls up all day. And I was like, well, I do lift, and then it is girls, so, why not? So, like, I was like, all right, sign me up, like, whatever. So I got into that, and, like, it actually really wasn't that bad. Like, we tumbled a lot. It was a lot of gymnastics involved with it, which I was pretty excited to get into. So, but yeah. And then, of course, I majored in design, so graphic design, so that's always been a hobby of mine. So I love specifically creating apparel. So I've made various singlets for USA Weightlifting. I've made some of my own custom singlets just for myself, and then of course for Lindenwood University, other teams and stuff like that. So I really enjoy doing apparel. I actually want to start my own apparel business someday, because that's just something I'm like super into. So, and that's, yeah. I feel like after I retire, I'll probably try to dial into that a little bit more as well, because that's just something that I never get to because of training full time. So I actually got the opportunity to become a coach at Left Coast CrossFit. They have a weightlifting team here, so I'll probably look into that a little bit more to just, coaching is, I know weightlifting and coaching, so I'll get that experience as well, like weightlifting, like right at the back of my hand. Like I know it just like that. So, coaching other athletes will be something I'll definitely be interested in, just to, share my knowledge of what I know from the past almost 2 decades of being a part of this sport. So it'll be pretty nice to, see that, that knowledge being, passed down to the next, not generation, but just the next athletes who find weightlifting appealing to them. So it'd be nice to see that. Definitely work on your weaknesses. That's always something that I just like put to the side sometimes, just because it's like, it's your weakness. Like you don't want to focus on something that's going to make you mad every day. Like that's definitely something that I've done as a youth. Like I know specifically my pulls have never been like super fast. Like people might say it is, but I never thought it was. So it's always something that I've neglected, specifically as a youth. Like I never did a bunch of bodybuilding for my back. Like I never had a super strong back, so that posterior chain was always weak. So I would tell my youth self, like, you know, do some more bodybuilding or something. Like, you know, I was always super high on technique, and the strength aspect was never one of my biggest things. So that would be something that I would tell my past self. And of course, other youths or other upcoming weightlifters, just obviously patience is key. Of course, work on all aspects of weightlifting. It's just not only technique, but strength and the mental aspect of it as well. So like just being patient, knowing yourself as an athlete, knowing your relationship with your coach and your team, and just knowing where you want to be as an athlete and as just as a person in general.